basically, if you want to get the future, and that's something you got to think about because it's deep when you start to really pay attention. We're talking about teaching kids now so that later the future generation, when they're older, are doing exactly what we want. So you have to think about the type of dedication, as I always say. These people spending the time, the years, teaching these kids so that when they grow up, the information that they have is just normal, regular life. They're going to teach their kids, so on and so forth. So understanding generational indoctrination is understanding the fact that if we just teach the kids, guess what? Everything else is going to take care of itself because they're going to grow up and teach their kids and so on and so forth. And then we just got to teach the kids. We don't have to worry about it later on because it's going to be the norm. And it's exactly what's happening in our society, today. And the ancient Greeks, you go back to that time, them basically going into ancient Kemet and seeing how the system was run and understanding that. When you really pay attention, how do you basically run the system? And it's exactly how I just said. Everything that we know, we are taught at a young age. And as we grow older and we see adults doing exactly what we was taught, it's normal. Anybody that goes against that normal system, the normal things that we do, is weird and it will stand out like a sore thumb. So this is how you establish civilizations of people to be under your control, under your system. You start with generational indoctrination, teaching the kids and getting the kids to understand this information, pass it down, so on and so forth. And they looked at the ancient Egyptian civilization and said, okay, well, these people are basically going and following because they was taught to do so. And they copied that. And it's just that simple. They looked at the situation and said, okay, well, we're going to come up with the same type of system. And we're going to create these stories and mythologies to keep our people in line, to get them to follow what we want them to follow. So all you have to basically do now is come up with the right story, the right structure, the right teachings to teach these people to get them in line with whatever your agenda is. And this is exactly what they did. And we're talking about something that's ancient, that's here today, thus telling you exactly, again, who's in power, as you're going to see. So before TV and everything like that, how do you spread this information? Because as I said, we're talking about teaching people, start from kids or what have you, or if you just wanted new information to give to these adults or teenagers that fit into the system or, the body of teaching that they already know. And what they would do was they would go from town to town and they would basically tell these stories. Now, have you seen Thor Ragnarok? Just to give you quick examples. Thor Ragnarok, remember the scene in the beginning when Loki is basically having the play and he's basically lying, trying to basically explain the whole situation with the Tesseract. And he is, really disguised as Odin, sitting there listening to the story. But the story's a lie. But you notice people gathered around and it's a stage scene and people just listening to the story. And this is how they was telling their history and telling stories or passing information. Same thing if you played the game Assassin's Creed. Remember in Assassin's Creed, you're walking around through the village. It would be a guy out there preaching or talking to the crowd or telling a story. And you have people gather around in large groups listening to the story. So, they would basically hear the story, go home, tell their family, what have you. They would listen to the story, go and repeat it. And that's how information spread, how the story spread, what have you. So in ancient Greece, they did the same thing. So only difference was they would sometimes tell the stories in poems or songs to attract more people. A lot of people was entertained by the poems or the music. And it was easier to spread the information that way and get more people to gather around. And people will want to hear the story over and over again because they will want to learn it and know it so they can go teach it because it was a poem or a song. It was something cool to know, even so far back then. Now, they call their whole situation a rhapsode. And a rhapsode is basically, I'm just going to read here, etymology and usage. Now it says here, the term rhapsode is derived from rhapsodian, meaning to sew songs together. This word illustrates how the oral epic poem or rhapsode would build a repertoire or diverse myths, tales, and jokes to include in the content of the epic poem. Thus, it was possible through experience and improvisatory skills for him to shift the content of the epos, which epos is basically like a long poem, according to the preferred taste of a specific location's audience. Now, what does that sound like to you? Rhapsode. When you really pay attention to the word, now we all heard of rhapsody music. Now, rhapsody music, when you go and look at it, they'll tell you straight up that rhapsody music comes from rhapsode. And we know we have rap. And a lot of people are not going to put that together, but I'm telling you, when I keep saying that this stuff is not ours, that it was given to us, and we're not understanding what it is. And rap, it's poems. We tell stories. It's funny stuff in rap. This stuff they've been doing a long time. Plain and simple. And they understand that music is an influencer. If they understood that when they wrote the Bible, when they wrote those hymns and songs, the whole story of Satan himself, of course they knew that when they gave us music and understanding how powerful and influential it would be, for us to have this music and put it out. They kept, when they was copying and plagiarizing the ancient Kemet, back then, they kept what, it took me a long time to really figure out, in ancient Egyptian teachings and mythologies about the will of the soul, about understanding that the Egyptians was trying to tell us about this trap, being trapped in flesh. And it's the same thing that the ancient Greeks talked about. And it's one of the things, as I said before, to really study ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. Using the Bible, of course, to finally put it all together. But if you went back to ancient Greek mythology, bam, it's right there. And it's tough. It's tough to get into the stuff. When you start to read it, it's so many different stories. You don't know which one to go by. It just sounds like a bunch of comic book stuff. And it's like, okay, leave it alone. But when you start matching it up, and this is how you know what it is and what to really follow. But the important part is that they kept that part of the story. And it's in their mythology. And it's one of the biggest clues as to what's going on. So you have, Orpheism. You have the whole Orphic mythology. It says here, the Orphic theogonies are genealogical works similar to the theogony of Hesiod. But the details are different, of course. They are really different. The theogonies are symbolically similar to Near Eastern models. The main story has it that Dionysus, in his carnation as Zagreus, is the son of Zeus and Persephone. Zeus gives his inheritance of the throne to the child, as Zeus is to leave due to Hera's anger over a child being born by another mother. The Titans are enraged over the proclamation of attendance and, at Hera's instigation, decide to murder the child. Dionysus is then tricked with a mirror and children's toy by the Titans, who murder and consume him, eating babies. Athena saves the heart and tells Zeus of the crime, who in turn hurls a thunderbolt on the Titans. The resultant suit from which sinful mankind is born contains the bodies of the Titans and Dionysus. The soul of men, the Dionysus part, is therefore divine, but the body, the Titan part, holds the soul in bondage. Thus, it was declared that the soul returned to a host 10 times bound to the will of rebirth. Let that sink in for a second. So now, Orpheism. It's basically where we get Gnosticism. Plain and simple, talk about the same things, talking about flesh being evil. We know the whole Gnostic faith, talked about before, talk about the same thing. Being trapped in flesh being evil. Same stuff. It's not a coincidence they found the Nag Hammadi manuscripts where they found them. And again, the Dead Sea Scrolls, found a couple years later, being what they are, again, them putting together these stories, putting them out there. for the time, to indoctrinate the people of the time in certain areas. That's what that stuff was about. You got a small town, you want to get this, 100 people or 52 people under this doctrine. You want it to fit what your agenda is. So this stuff pops up a lot and we find it. But the Gnostic faith, a lot of people want to give it the credit for being the originator of that kind of thinking, of flesh being evil. But it's definitely not. And we can see that you had it back in ancient Greece, and everything else is found there. I mean, it's all there, everything, the whole primordial gods, the Ogdol, the cosmic egg is even here. So it's saying here, Orphic poetry. This is 532 BC. Made Nyx the first principal knight, and her offspring were many. Also, in the Orphic tradition, Phanes, a mystic Orphic deity of light and procreation, sometimes identified with the elder Eros, is the original ruler of the universe, who hatched from the cosmic egg. And there's many depictions of Phanes and the cosmic egg, and you'll see a serpent. A lot of this stuff we talked about before. This stuff is something, we get into this in a little bit more, where we can't ignore this whole serpent talk and dragon talk is because it's everywhere, as I said. You're going to find this stuff in a lot of different places. Now, there's many other civilizations we could look to find stories about, primordial gods, cosmic eggs, and almost all of the ancient civilizations that we know of that we really don't have so much information from. You'll be surprised how many civilizations have creation stories about the egg, and it's amazing. So in China, you have the story of Pangu, and it says here in the beginning there was an enormous egg containing chaos. Sounds familiar? Finally, the egg burst open, and out leaps the giant dragon Pangu. Now, it's different stories when you read this, just like in all the other mythologies. So in this story, you have sometimes it says when Pangu burst out of the egg, sometimes it's the dragon, sometimes it's the man. And, when he burst out of the egg, he created yin and yang. He basically separated yin and yang. And you look at the depiction of the egg being upper and lower. In some depictions, it'll say that he created earth, which will be on the bottom, and the sky, which will be on the top, by breaking out of the egg. So it says he created rivers with his fingers and strapped the earth down to create flat land. He gathered raw light and tossed them into the sky to become stars. The half-goddess Nua was born after Pangu died from part of the mixture of yin and yang that he had separated. She decided to create humans to have some other beings to talk to and share ideas with, but mostly just to love. She made hundreds and hundreds of mud humans, but soon realized that it would take centuries for her to make enough people. So, as the sun dried each drop, it became a new man or woman. Some say that these humans were the less intelligent ones. Those formed by Nua's own hand became great leaders. She told them to go and populate the earth. Go be fruitful and multiply. Go populate. Same type of stories. We find this stuff throughout the ancient world, even with the Dogon. And again, stories are different depending on what you read. Amma and the egg that contains the universe. The early story of the universe has to do with a struggle between Amma, the creator, and Ogo, one of the creations. Sounds familiar? In the beginning, Amma alone was in the shape of an egg. The 4 collarbones were fused, dividing the egg into air, earth, fire, and water, establishing also the 4 cardinal directions. Within the cosmic egg was the material and the structure of the universe, and the 266 signs that embrace the essence of all things. The first creation of the world by Amma was, however, a failure. The second creation began when Amma planted a seed within herself, a seed that resulted in the shape of man. But in the process of its gestation, there was a flaw, meaning that the universe would now have within it the possibility for incompleteness. Now they became two placentas, each containing a set of twins, male and female. Think about what I'm saying, everything we've been talking about. After 60 years, one of the males, Ogo, broke out of the placenta and attempted to create his own universe, in opposition to that being created by Amma. But he wasn't able to say the words that would bring such a universe into being. He then descended as Amma transformed into the earth, the fragment of placenta that went with Ogo unto the void. Ogo interfered with the creative potential of the earth by having incestuous relations with it. His counterpart, Nomo, a participant in the revolt, was then killed by Amma. The parts of his body cast in all directions, bringing a sense of order to the world. When 5 days later Amma brought the pieces of Namo's body together, restoring him to life, Namo became ruler of the universe. He created 4 spirits, the ancestors of the Dogon people. Amma sent Nomo and the spirits to earth in an ark. And so the earth was restored along the way. Nomo uttered the words of Amma, and the sacred words that create were made available to humans. In the meantime, Ogo was transformed by Amma into Yuguru, the pale fox, who will always be alone, always be incomplete, eternally in revolt, ever wandering the earth, seeking his female soul. Now, there's so much we can really get into with just the story of the Dogon, but have a whole DVD coming out on the Dogon in the near future. But wanted to put out there not just these 2 other stories, and Greek mythology as well as Egyptian mythology, all involving this cosmic egg, serpents, or what have you. It's all the same stuff, all going back to ancient Kemet. We can go to many different civilizations and find similar stories. And the crazy thing, of course, is we're not taught these stories. We're not told about this stuff. If you don't hear about it, if you don't find it online or what have you, we haven't been taught this. You got to think about all the years of schooling that was happening, before our time, where people wasn't being taught this information, yet it's out there. It's really important information, and it has more validity to it than anything biblical, because you have many different civilizations speaking of similar things versus the Bible, where it's the only place you're going to find, Jesus and Moses and Aaron and all these people in that one book, that one spot. It's not different civilizations spread out through time and distance, giving you these same sort of stories. So we got to really look at that. Think about it's a reason why they want to keep this stuff from us, and a reason why it sounds all familiar and the same, because there's truth to it, even though the stories are esoteric and have hidden knowledge, hidden meanings to it. And you got to ask yourself, what would be the purpose of that? When seemingly so, we don't speak the language, but maybe the Egyptians gave it straight up, to its people. And what was taught in the mystery schools was taught, who knows how. But clearly, some people seem fit to put together these esoteric stories. And maybe it probably was esoteric stories in Kemet as well, but they seem fit to do it this way for a reason. And, some of us can figure it out, some can't, but there has to be a reason behind that. We're going to get into that. But this information is out there, and it's not being taught to us, and we have to find it and look for it. And when we find it, we find similar stuff, and it's a reason. So we got to look at this and really study it. So what people are not realizing is we are being constantly bombarded with Greek mythology, with Greek concepts and teachings everywhere. Not just the Bible, but Greek mythology. Almost every single epic movie or fantasy movie, almost all of them have some roots in Greek mythology, or it's flat out Greek mythology. It's a lot of movies and TV shows that have been put out over the years, over the decades, that is completely Greek. That is giving you Greek themes, or taking stories from Greek mythology and giving you these movies, teaching us and telling us about things that have esoteric meanings, esoteric backgrounds. It's a lot of them. They're out there. And of course, we see how Greek mythology plays within the school system. You graduate with the square of Kronos, or the square of Saturn on your head, the whole black robes of Saturn or what have you. You have college, where you have Greek fraternities. You're taught Greek mythology in school. You have these Greek fraternities that people go to, sororities, Greek week. So much stuff that's Greek that we find throughout our society that we are not really understanding how much Greek there is. So, talked about before with DC, Greek mythology, Marvel as well, both Egyptian mythology and Greek mythology. This stuff is all the same. You got to really pay attention and know how to look for when it's giving you Greek mythology. And I talked about before how you have the original Marvel comics, the original Marvel universe being based off Greek mythology. Stan Lee shows this himself, talked about this before, and you can see from the depictions, it comes from ancient Egyptian mythology, ancient Egyptian gods. So the original Marvel characters, you have ancient Egypt. Now, also, what a lot of people don't understand is before you had the Avengers, you had the Olympians. Greek mythology, Greek, the Olympians. So when we finally get the Avengers, who did the Avengers go up against? They fought Zeus. Greek mythology, they fought Zeus. Now, who did Zeus beat in Greek mythology? He beat the Titans. The Titans. And when you read Marvel Comics, anybody who reads Marvel Comics featuring Thanos, even if you've seen the new Avengers movie, they refer to Thanos as what? The Mad Titan. And when you look in the comic books, it tells you the same. It's called the Mad Titan. Now, understand, Thanos is called the Mad Titan, or the Titan. The simple fact that he's called a Titan should tell you something, because Thanos comes from the Greek Thanatos. Thanatos is the god of death. Anybody who reads those Marvel comics featuring Thanos, you know. Thanos is obsessed with death. Plain and simple. He's consumed by it. He's obsessed with it. Plain and simple. So, Thanatos is the god of death. Who else is the god of death? Kronos. Kronos is called the Grim Reaper, god of death. Touch you, you die. Thanatos is also called the Grim Reaper, god of death. Now, the name Thanos is a male name. Comes from the Greek male name Athanasos, which means immortal. And when you look on the Marvel's website, it talks about Thanatos. It says, skip down here, Thanatos materialized in the presence of the Avengers, led by the line of Olympus. The fact that they're putting this stuff together tell you something. It's on Marvel's site. Marvel, Thanatos, led by the line of Olympus, Hercules, and his sister Athena, who were engaged in a heated battle with the Olympus group led by Hera. Now, in Greek mythology, Thanatos has a twin brother, Hypnos. Hypnos is the god of sleep, because they understood that sleep and death was the same. It's the same thing. And it's one of the things to try to get you to understand, what you're going to get more deeply into, is getting you to understand that fact, that death and sleep is the exact same thing. The problem is you don't have full control over death because you are stuck still with the material, your body. It's basically keeping you here in bondage from really experiencing the true reality. Not only that, you're basically in a state of, incoherence, where your subconscious has basically turned against you and is basically, split, trying to really get you to get things together, which the Gnostics call the gnosis, the knowledge, as I keep telling you guys, to get this stuff together in order for you to, have the right knowledge to conjure the power needed to escape, to really keep going and not get caught up in the cycle of reincarnation. But death and sleep is the same. If you remember Freddy Krueger, what did he do? In your dreams, if he killed you in your dreams, you died in real life. They was trying to give you the hint that sleep is death. What did Freddy want? Your soul. It's giving you all that information right there, getting you to put it together. It's the same stuff. So now when you really pay attention, you understand Thanos, this character from Marvel that's not new. A lot of people have no clue. It's been around for a long time. This character from Marvel is Kronos. It's the same being. Whenever you get these characters, Zeus, Kronos. Zeus is also Jupiter. Kronos, Zeus, Santa Claus, Satan. I mean, all this stuff the same. And that's the thing. People get caught up in the story so much. It's the same. It's Kronos. So Thanos in the Marvel world, given to you in this movie, in this huge blockbuster that we have been seeing, everybody's talking about, making t-shirts and shit. It's Kronos. Plain and simple. Right there in your face. It's Kronos. Now, the 6 Infinity Stones basically represents the power that Kronos or Saturn has over the Earth or the planet. So you have the Soul Stone, the Mind Stone, Reality Stone, you have Space Stone, you have Time, you have Power. These stones, as I said, represents the power that Saturn has over us, over the Earth. Plain and simple. As I said, people get caught up in the story and they don't really understand the history or the esoteric meaning behind what the story is trying to say. They're just caught up in the action and everything that's going on. So clear as day, the stones represent that. Power, Saturn. And, it basically gives it away that Thanos is Kronos, especially the part when he basically destroys the moon and hurls it at Iron Man. It's one of the things they give it away right there. But also, if you remember, if you go back to comic books, go back to Thor, anybody who was really into Thor, remember, Thor fought, against the stones of Saturn. It was 6 stone men from Saturn that Thor fought against. And remember, all 6 of them had different powers. And, this is something that if you had the toys, anybody who was really into it, remember those beings. And the thing was, they were called Cronians. Now it says here, around 3000 BC, the Cronians attempted an invasion of Earth. Landing in ancient Babylon, they fought King Gilgamesh of Uruk, who vanquished them with the aid of a time-traveling Captain America. The Cronians established a base on one of Saturn's moons, hence the name Stone Men of Saturn. In modern time, the Cronians landed an immense invasion force in Norway. Cited by Dr. Donald Blake, they pursued him into a cave where Blake discovered the hammer of Thor. The Cronians were on to attack NATO forces, driving them off with an illusion of a dragon. Think about this. Then Thor came to fight them. They lowered the cage over him to capture him, but he smashed through. They aimed their disintegrators at him, but he smashed them with his hammer. Finally, they unleashed the Mechano monster, but Thor destroyed it with a single blow. Terrified of Thor, the Cronians fled Earth. So now, as I said, generational indoctrination. For centuries, they have been giving us the same story over and over again. Different forms, different ways. From rhapsodes to plays, musicals, poems, to Bibles, comic books, music, movies, TV shows, entertainment today. Plain and simple, it's been a progression of the same shit over and over again in different ways. The difference is generational acceptance. The way the generations was given, the information, the way they had to accept it has been different, but not so much different. No matter what year it is, a century, you tell somebody something, they learn it. Plain and simple. We just had different methods over time. And the thing with us, and the reason why it works so well against us, is the power of popularity, which is why I touched on that before, where something is so popular. I mean, it's the same thing back then as well. But, when you have stuff like mainstream media and TV and everything like that, it's easier for you to get to more of the masses of people versus back then, story to story, person to person. Things change, words change, a dragon becomes a dinosaur, so on and so forth. And you get to our time where the stories is really mixed up and there's a bunch of different versions, as you can see. but it's the same stuff over and over again. The thing is, why? Same story. Think about it. And it's something that you can't let slip away when you figure out the truth. You have to harp on the fact that it's Greek mythology, going back to ancient Kemet, kind of sort of switched around, plagiarized, but giving you that same core story that's going to eventually lead you to the fact that you have a soul, a spirit trapped in flesh when you get down to it, when you try to really take in the esoteric meaning of it all. And it's the same story over and over and over again that we keep getting. And it's from the Greeks. And now you can see what I was saying before in the beginning. You can see who's in power. Because now, when you look at it and you go all the way back from the Rhapsodes, from when they was teaching that way, what they was teaching, up until now, we can see everything we've been taking in. All the movies, the information, are teaching itself, graduation, everything. Greek. Plain and simple. So you had, up until the Greeks conquered ancient Kemet, Zeus was God. Zeus was God of gods. And, once they started getting in that information, they started to change him. Zeus Amon. So I showed you guys when I went to the Cairo Museum. So now with Zeus Amon, interesting thing, it says here, Zeus, father of the gods and men, was one of the most important gods of Macedonia, as he was in most of Greece. He was in fact called by the title Panhellenos. Of all the Greeks, he is the only Greek god I have seen referred to like this. You see, sometimes gods shared titles. Both Zeus and Dionysus are called Soter, savior, and Athena was called Soteria, which is the feminine form. Amon, which means hidden in Egyptian, is by coincidence very similar to Amos, the Greek word for sand. So, among the first Greeks to encounter Amon, Zeus Amon was also a kind pun. It meant to them sandy Zeus, which is very appropriate for a god of a country that is primarily desert. Amon and Zeus were related very early on. Moreover, even most believe that Ammon is the name given to Zeus in the land of the Egyptians, a name which we, with a slight alteration, pronounce Ammon. Some writers said that not only are Zeus and Ammon the same deity, but is the same as the Jewish god who Celsus called Sabbath or Sabbath. And basically, every god called the highest god or the king of the gods in each pantheon, he explicitly states that it makes no difference which one you invoke. Roman author Minucius Felix comments on the various depictions of Zeus and or Jupiter. Everything you have been seeing, everything is saying there, is saying exactly what I have been talking about. That is the Greeks.